Okay guys, so welcome to this course. In this course I will teach you how to make an Android game for mobile devices, and we will publish the game to the Google Play Store. I will show you how to do all of that. So the game that we will be making is a game like this. Okay, we will have our chicken, and we will have some columns, and we will go through the columns like this. And each time we go through the columns, we will have a score that will go up. And if we collide with the columns, we will stop the game, and we will have the option to restart the game. So it's going to be a very simple game. We're going to make it in Unity, and we're going to publish it to the Google Play Store. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing that we need to do is that we need to download Unity. So to do that, let's go to Google, and let's type in Unity download. All right, let's look for the first result, and just click it. And here we have the option to download Unity or download Unity Hub. Go ahead and download Unity Hub. I have already downloaded it. So once you download Unity Hub, it will look something like this. Let me open it for you. Okay, so here you will have Unity Hub. You won't have any projects here because it's the first time that you open it. Go to installs, and here in installs you won't have any version of the Unity editor, but it's very simple. You just have to click add, and you have to choose the Unity editor version that you want. I'm gonna choose 2020 just to show you what you have to do. Then click next. And here, since we're gonna build an Android game for mobile devices, you wanna have this Android build support checked. Make sure that Android SDK and Indicate Tools is checked, and OpenJDK is checked as well. And then you can uncheck iOS build support because we're not gonna make it for the iOS, so you can uncheck that. Make sure that the documentation is checked, and then click next. And then just click where it says I have read and agree with the terms of conditions. Click done, and you will start to download Unity. I have already downloaded it, so I'm not going to do it again. Once you have downloaded your Unity editor, go to projects, and we will click new. And here you have the settings to choose what kind of project you want. Since we're going to create a 2D project, let's select 2D. And for the project, let's call it chicken. It says it already exists. I'm going to call it chicken 1, for example. And the location is going to be Unity Games. So you can choose what location you want for your game over here. And let's just go ahead and create the game. Unity will start creating the template, the default template for your game. It's going to take a little bit, so be a little bit patient. Okay, so once you open Unity, it will look something like this. I have arranged my editor in a special way. So if it's the first time you open Unity, you will see something like this. Okay, this is the default template that Unity has for you, but we're going to arrange it in a different way because I prefer to have it in a different way. So to arrange things in the Unity editor is very simple, okay? First of all, you can see that we have windows, different windows. Here we have our hierarchy, our scene. This is where we're going to have all of our objects, all of our game objects. And then we also have the game tab. So what we're going to do first of all is that we're going to drag the hierarchy, just click and hold, and we're going to drag it to the right like this and just place it there. So we have our hierarchy to the right, and then just click where the game tab, where it says game, and just hold and drag it to the left like this. So we have the game view on the left, the scene on the center, and the hierarchy on the right. We have the inspector all the way to the right, and below we have the project view and the console view like this. Okay, so now since we're gonna make an Android game, we have to make a little change to the Unity editor. Let's go to where it says, let me maximize this for a moment. Let's go to File and click where it says Build Settings, and in here choose the Android. Okay, choose Android, and then click where it says Switch Platform. Okay, so now Unity will make some adjustments to adapt our game to adapt our Unity editor to make an Android game. Okay, now that we have that done, let's close the Build Settings window. And now let's go to the game view, and here where it says free aspect, click. And now we're going to select the resolution 9:16 portrait. Okay, we're going to be working with that resolution as a reference. And now what we can do is that we can start importing our assets. Okay, you have the link in the description for the assets. So to import the assets, just go to the folder where you have the assets. And let me see where I have them. I have them over here. Okay, and just go to the folder where it says sprites, and you will see a sprites sprite sheet. Just click, hold, and drag to the project view here in Unity, and you will see that we have successfully imported our assets. But we need to make some changes to these assets. Okay, so just click here in the sprites, click the sprites, and here in the inspector you will see the properties of the sprite here on the right side. and go to the sprite mode, and you can see that it's set to single. Let's change it to multiple because we have multiple sprites in our sprite sheet. And for the pixels per unit, choose 24. All right, now for the filter mode, choose point no filter, and then for the compression, choose none, and then when I hit apply. Okay, so we have made these settings because we're using pixel art, and since we're using pixel art, we need to make some adjustments so that the pixel art looks good on Unity. That's why we made these adjustments. Okay, so now just make sure you select the sprites and click here in inspector where it says sprite editor, and this is sprite editor. Here we're going to slice our sprites, so go here to the top left corner where it says slice and hit slice. All right, so now you can see that there has been some boxes that have been created, and they go around the objects. Okay, you can see around the sprites, and if we zoom in with the mouse wheel, you can see that there are 3 frames. Okay, for the chicken, there are 3 sprites for the chicken for the animation of the chicken flying, and you can see that this one is a little bit smaller than these 2 above. So we're gonna make it the same size. So to make it the same size, just hover, and you can see that there's a line. So just click and hold and drag to the left a little bit. So they're all the same size. Okay. And then just hit apply here on the top right, and now all of our changes have been saved. So now we will go here to the assets. You can see that there is an arrow here. If you press here, you can see that all of our sprites have been separated. So now we can start adding our sprites to the scene. It's very easy. Just click and hold and drag to the hierarchy. Let's add in the background, and you can see that it has a long name. So we can change the name here from the inspector, change it to BG. All right. So now we have our background. Let's add the ground, for example. Let's just hold and drag, and let's change the name to ground. All right. If you press W on the keyboard, you can see that we have some arrows appear here in the scene, and with these arrows you can move the sprite around on the scene. Okay, you can move it like this. If you move it, for example, here, if you press Ctrl Z, you can undo whatever you did. Okay. So don't worry if you don't understand all of the tools here in the inspector. We're gonna go little by little, okay? So you understand how they work. All right, so now what we can do is that we can move the ground down a little bit like this, so it fits nicely. You can see here in the game view how everything is looking. And now let's select our chicken. Let's select here. If you select one of the sprite chicken here in the project view, you can see that in the inspector we have the preview of the sprite that we have selected. So let's select the chicken with the wing facing up, and let's just drag it to the hierarchy. And now let's rename it to chicken. All right, let's move it to the left on the scene like this. Perfect. And now let's hit play. When we hit play, our scene will be, all of our changes will be saved automatically, and we will play the game in the game view. Okay, so this is what the play button does. So let's hit play and let's see what happens. And what happens is that everything disappears. Okay, we have the ground that disappears and the chicken disappears as well. Okay, so why does this happen? This happens because of the layers. Okay, Unity works with layers like in Photoshop, and if we select an object, for example the ground, you can see that the sorting layer here in the inspector, in the sprite render component, you can see that there's a sorting layer field, and it is set to default. If we select the chicken, it's also set to default, and if we select the background, it's also set to default. So we're gonna create different layers for the different game objects. Okay, so let's go to the sorting layer, click where it says default, and let's click add sorting layer. We're gonna click the plus icon, and let's create a layer called background. This is where we will put our background. Okay, let's create another layer call it midground, and let's create another layer and call it foreground. All right, so we have 3 layers. Now let's select the background here in the hierarchy and set the sorting layer to background. Let's select the ground and set the sorting layer to foreground, and let's select the chicken and set the sorting layer to foreground as well. Okay, so why do they appear now in front of the background? Well, if we take a look at the sorting layers, if we take a look at the sorting layer, we can see that the foreground is in front, is after the midground, and the midground is after the background. So the further the layer appears here, that means that the objects that are in this layer will render before the objects that are rendered in a layer that is after. So if that makes sense, I don't know if I explained it correctly, but you can see that here we have 3 layers. We can move them around. So let's say that I moved the background in front of the foreground. Now the background will render in front of the foreground. I think you can see it like that a little bit better. So that's how you work with layers, basically. So now if we select the chicken, you can see that the chicken and the ground have the same layer. They have the foreground. And we want the chicken to render behind the foreground. And it happens to be that way. But to make sure that the chicken always renders behind the ground, what we can do is that we can make sure that we set the ordering layer. And what is the ordering layer? Well, if we have two objects in the same layer, we can play with the ordering layer to make sure that one object always renders in front or behind the other object. For example, if we set the ordering layer of the chicken to 1, we can see that now the chicken renders in front of the ground. But we don't want this. So let's change the ordering layer of the chicken back to 0, and let's select the ground and change the ordering layer of the ground to 1, for example. This way we can guarantee that the ground will always render in front of the bird of the chicken and the chicken behind the ground. Okay, so that was just a little bit of explanation about layers. And now what we can do is that we can add some animation, right, to the chicken, because the chicken is now a little bit static. Let's add a little bit animation. So to add an animation is very simple. You select the chicken and we'll have to go to Window, Animation, and let's select Animation. And now you can see that the window pops up, and it's the animation window. So let's just drag it and place it somewhere. Let's place it to the left on the bottom. Sorry, to the right on the bottom. And now make sure that chicken is selected and select Create. And now we will create our new animation, but we're going to create a new folder for the animation. So you just click where it says Assets and create new folder. And we will call this folder Animations, like this. And double click in the animations folder. And now we're going to give a name to our animation. Let's call it Flap, for example, or Fly Animation. And click Save. And now once we create the animation, once we created it, we can see that the animation window, we can see that there is like a timeline that appears here in the animation window. And to create the animation, we're going to select the sprites, the different chicken sprites, okay? So let's start with the chicken facing, with the wing facing up, and let's just drag the chicken to the timeline, to the 0, 0, for example. If you don't see the chicken, just go here where it says chicken sprite here in the animation window and click this arrow. And now you can see the sprite clearly here in the animation timeline. And now we're gonna select the chicken with the wing at middle position. Let's drag it to the 0 to 0, 0, 5. And let's drag the chicken with the wing facing down to 0.1. Okay, so now we have created an animation. If you press play here in the animation window, you will see here in the scene that the chicken is being animated. But the animation doesn't look very smooth. To make the animation a little bit smoother, we're going to add some more keyframes of for the chicken. So we're gonna just copy and paste some of the chicken frames. So let's go ahead and select the chicken with the wing at middle position in the animation window, and let's hit Ctrl C. And now we can select here in the timeline. If you click here and where the numbers are, you can click where it says 0.15, for example, and click Ctrl V. And now you can click where it says 0.20, and we can paste the other chicken frame, which is the frame with the chicken with the wing facing up. Sorry. So just hit Ctrl C and Ctrl V. Now we hit play, you will see that there is an animation, and that animation is way smoother. If it goes a little bit slow, what you can do is that you can select the first keyframe and hold shift and select the last one. So you select all of them, and now you can hover and you can drag like this to the left to make the animation a little bit faster. If you hit play, you will see that the animation runs a little bit faster. If it's too fast, you can play a little bit more, just to play around with it until you find the right speed for the animation, one that you like. Okay, so I think we are done with animation. Now, if we hit play and we play the game, you will see that the chicken has an animation going on, okay? Now the chicken is flying, and that's a big improvement in our game. Okay, so now what we can do is that we can add some physics to the chicken, because the chicken has an animation. Now we can see that the chicken is alive, but it's static, and we need some gravity affecting the chicken. So to do that, let's select the chicken. Let's go to the inspector and add a component. So click here in the button where it says add component in the inspector, and let's add a rigid, so type in rigid body 2D. Okay, make sure you select rigid body 2D and not rigid body, because rigid body is for 3D and we're making a 2D game, so select rigid body 2D. Okay, now that we have selected rigid body 2D, now our chicken will be affected by gravity, and we can check this out by pressing play and playing the game, and you will see that the chicken falls to the ground. If you take a look at the rigid body 2D component, you can see that there's a value, there's a field called gravity scale, and the value is set to 1. That is why our chicken is being affected by gravity. Okay, so now what we can do is that we have to make sure that the chicken collides with the ground, because we want the chicken to actually collide with the ground. So we need to use colliders for this. So let's collapse some of the components here just by clicking the arrows to the side of the name of the component. And let's add a new component for the chicken. Let's add a capsule collider 2D component, okay? This will create a collider for the chicken. If you don't see it very well, you can move the chicken to the left, and now you can see that there's like a green circle like around the chicken. This is the collider. And it's a little bit circular, so we're gonna change it so it looks more like a capsule. So go here to the capsule collider 2D, and here in the direction field, change it from vertical to horizontal. And now hit where it says edit collider here. And now you can see that we have some points, some pivot points that have appeared here in the around the collider of the chicken. So you can click one of those points and drag it, so you can resize the collider. We're gonna resize the collider like this, a little bit inside of the bird, so it fits nicely. I say chicken, I say bird, but it's the same thing, okay? Okay, now we can just move the chicken back to the scene. And let's go ahead and hit play and see what happens. Okay, so the chicken falls right through the ground. Why is this? Okay, this happens because the ground also needs a collider. If we want collisions to happen, both objects need to have colliders. So let's select the ground and let's add a component. Let's add a box collider component for the ground. So let's select box collider 2D. And now the ground will also have a collider. You might not see it very well, but it's there. You can move the ground to the right, and now you can see the collider pretty clear. Now we can do the same thing. We can click edit collider, and we can make the collider a little bit like this. Just play with it so the chicken collides nicely with the ground. It's just to make it look good. Now to reposition the ground without moving it, what we can do is that we can see here in the inspector that the position is set to 6.36. This is the current position of the ground. Let's go ahead and change it back to 0. Okay, so now we center the position of the ground, and the ground is nicely in its place. Alright, so now we hit play, the chicken should collide with the ground. And we can see that the chicken does collide with the ground, and we achieve this effect, and that's very nice. Okay, so now what we can do is that we want to make sure that our chicken flaps whenever we tap on the screen of the phone, right? So whenever we click with our left mouse button, we want to be able to make the chicken flap. So how do we achieve this? Okay, we achieve this by creating a script. So let's go ahead and go here in the project view and select the assets folder, and let's create 2 new folders. Let's create a first folder, so hit create and folder, and now we're gonna name this folder sprites. And we're gonna move the sprites to the sprites folder, and now let's go ahead and right click, create folder, and let's create a folder called scripts. So the scripts are basically what's going to define the behavior for our game objects in our game. So let's go inside the scripts folder and right click, create C# script. And let's rename the C# script to, let's rename it to chicken, for example. The chicken is gonna do okay. So rename it to chicken, hit enter. Remember to name your scripts with an uppercase, okay? An uppercase and no spaces between the name. Imagine that the name of the script is made of 2 words, then there has to be no spaces between the words, and each word starts with uppercase letter. This is just how we programmers write. This is how we define the scripts. So now just to open the chicken script, just double click and Visual Studio will open. Visual Studio is just the editor for the script. Is where we're gonna make the changes to our code. So here we have the chicken. So what we need to do is that we need a speed for the flap of the chicken, okay? So let's just create a public variable of type float, and we will name it speed. And also we need to have access to the rigid body of the chicken. Okay, we need to have access to the rigid body. So if you select the chicken, you can see that we have the rigid body component, and we want access to the rigid body component because we want to add a force or a velocity to this rigid body. Okay, so to do this, it's very simple. We need to create a variable of type rigid body 2D. We're going to call it RB, and in the start method, we're going to say that RB is equal to get component rigid body 2D. All right, so what am I doing here? I'm saying that RB is going to be equal to the component, to the rigid body 2D component that this script is attached to. We're going to attach this script to the chicken. So this RB is going to be equal to the rigid body 2D of the chicken. If you don't know what the start method of the update method is, the start method is just the method, the function, the code that's going to run at the start of the game. And the update method is the game loop. We're gonna call this update method in every frame of the game. Okay, so this is a good method. This is a good place to check for user input, for example, and things like that. So here we're going to check. We're going to say if. I don't want you to understand everything that I'm doing with the code. Just follow along and try to get the idea of what I'm doing, the logic behind it. That's more important for me than you actually understand every single thing what is doing, but just try to understand the general idea. Okay, so here we're gonna say if input dot get mouse button down. So here this basically means if I press the left mouse button, then we want to flap. So to flap, we're going to say that RB.velocity, so the rigid body.velocity is going to be equal to new vector2. Okay, so first of all, let's stop, because when the chicken is falling down, we want to stop the velocity of the chicken. RB.velocity is equal to vector2.0. And after this, after stopping the fall of the bird, we're going to say that RB.velocity is equal to new vector2. And we're going to say RB.velocity.x, because we don't want to change the velocity of the chicken on the x-axis. We want to change the velocity of the chicken in the y-axis. So we're gonna say that we want the velocity on the y-axis to be equal to our speed. All right, so now this should work. Let's go back to the Unity editor, and in here we're going to select our chicken. We're gonna collapse this component so we have more space. Let's click add component and let's select the chicken script. Just look for chicken, and now you can see that we have the speed field over here. Why is the speed field over here? Because we said that the speed was going to be public. This means that we can edit it from the inspector. All right, so now let's set a speed of 4, for example, and now let's hit play. So now if we click, we can see that the chicken is actually flapping, right? Which is what we want. It's flapping every time we click the left mouse button, our chicken flaps. Perfect. Okay, so now what we can do is that we can make the ground move to the left, because we want the ground to be moving to the left and we want the background also to be moving to the left. So let's create a behavior for that. Let's go to the scripts folder and let's create a new script. So right click, create C# script, and let's create a script called move left. So move left, capital uppercase M, uppercase L. Let's double click the script to open it in Visual Studio. And for this script, we also need a speed, okay, or a velocity. So let's create, let's say public float speed. All right, and now we are just gonna do something in the update method. We're gonna just move the object that this script is attached to the left. So we're gonna say transform dot position, right? Because the ground and the background don't have a rigid body 2D. So we're gonna just update. If you select the ground, what we're going to do is that we're gonna update the position of the ground, this X position of the ground. So we have to access the transform component, okay? So in the code we say transform dot position is equal to new vector2, open parentheses, and I'm just hitting enter so you can see it in a better way. So we're gonna type in the X component, so transform dot position dot X minus speed times time dot delta time. I'm gonna explain what this is in a moment. And for the Y position, we're not gonna update the Y position, so just transform dot position dot Y. Okay, so what are we doing here? Okay, we're saying that we want the transform dot position dot X. So in every frame of the game, we want to take away from the transform dot position dot X the speed, But imagine that we don't put time.dataTime. This means that we want to take away the speed in every frame of the game, and that's a lot of speed, and that, I mean, that's a great distance, because the speed is measured in Unity units, okay? And if we just if you don't understand this, it's okay, but just know that when I'm multiplying by time.delta-time, what we are doing here is that I'm saying that I want to move this speed to the left in 1 second, okay? If we didn't put time.delta-time, we would be moving this amount in every frame, and this is too much for the game object. Okay? It's gonna disappear very quickly from the scene, because Unity works with Unity units, and let's say that, let's go back to the Unity editor. Let's say that one of these squares is a Unity unit. So basically, if we're saying that the speed is 2, we are saying that we want to move 2 of these, or say 2 Unity units in 1 frame. And if there's 60 frames in a second, that's a lot, that's too fast, okay? So what we want to do is that we want to move this amount, these 2 Unity units, but in 1 second. And we achieve that by multiplying by time.delta-time, okay? So now I think we have everything set. Now let's go back to the Unity editor and let's select the ground. And let's do the same thing as with the chicken. Let's select the move left script by adding the component. And let's set the speed to 2, for example. And let's go ahead and click play. And we can see that the ground is moving to the left, but the ground is moving to the infinite, okay? I mean, it's not stopping, and we want the ground to reposition itself. So what we want to do is that we want the ground to reposition itself when it gets to this point over here. When it gets to this point, we want to reposition itself. So when you can see that at this position, the ground is at position -6 on the x-axis. So one thing that you can notice is that if you select the ground and you take a look at the box collider of the ground, you can see that the size of the collider is 6. So that means that if we can get access to this value, then we can actually set the repositioning of the ground. So let's go ahead, and for the ground, what we're going to do is that we need access to the box collider. So let's do the same thing. Let's create a variable of type box collider2D and call it box. And at the start of the game, we're going to say box equals get component box collider2D, like this. Okay, so we're getting access to the box collider2D. And now we're going to create a variable of type float. I'm going to call it width. This is going to be the width of the game object, okay, of the ground in this case. And here we're going to say that width is equal to box.size.x. So width is equal to the box collider.size.x. This means that the width is going to be equal to the box collider.size.x. It's going to be equal to 6 in this case. Okay, so now that we have that done, we're going to check in the update method. Remember that I told you that the update method is for checking. So we're going to check if the ground is at the position, at the right position to reposition the ground, okay, if that makes sense. So if transform.position.x is less than or equal to -width to -6, then we want to reposition the ground. So transform.position is equal to new vector2, and for the x component we're going to say transform.position.x plus 2 times width. Okay, because we need to add the width times 2. If we are here, if the ground is here, we need to add its width times 1 times 2. So it's over here, all the way to the right. Okay, and for the y component, just transform.position.y, because we're not gonna alter the y position. All right, so now everything should work fine. Just save. Make sure you save the script. Okay, you need to hit Control S, save the script. I think I didn't tell you, but you have to save the script before moving to the editor, so the changes are applied. Okay, so now that we have the ground, let's just set it back to position 0, and let's see if it works. Let's hit play, and let's see if the ground repositions itself. And perfect, the ground is repositioning itself. It's just that we only have one ground. Let's go ahead and select the ground in the hierarchy, and let's hit Ctrl D. And now we have a second ground. Let's move it and place it just below the first ground. And let's position the second ground in position 6 on the x-axis. And now you can see that it's right next to the first ground. And now if we hit play, we will see that both grounds have the same behavior, so both grounds will be repositioning themselves, and we get this effect of a never-ending scrolling ground. We're gonna do the same thing for the background. So let's select the background, let's add a component, let's add the move left component, and let's set a speed of 1 for the background, for example. Let's hit play, and now we can see that all of the objects are moving, but we're getting an error. And how do I know this? Because you can see that there's a red line here at the bottom of the Unity editor. We can see the errors on the console, so let's go ahead and select the console. We don't need the animation window anymore, so let's just put it here, and let's just drag the console to the right so we can see things more clear. Alright, so here that you can see the console, and you can see that we have an error. Let's try to read what's saying. There is no box collider 2D attached to the BG game object. Okay, so what's happening right here? We can see that we have the variable box that is trying to access the get component of box collider 2D. But the problem is that the background doesn't have a box collider 2D. So let's add a component to the background. Let's add a box collider 2D. And now the background has a box collider 2D, but we don't want the background to be colliding with anything, right? So let's set the box collider 2D to is trigger. By setting it to is trigger, we're making sure that the collider is not working as a collider, it's just working as a trigger. Okay, so now we can just duplicate the background. We can move the second background and position it at position 6 on the x-axis. And now let's play the game. And we can see that the ground repositions itself, and the background should reposition itself, and we don't have any errors. Okay, everything's working perfect. Okay, so now what we can do is that we can add a pipe. Okay, our game needs some pipes, some columns. So to do this, let's go ahead and just go to the sprites folder. Let's select the pipes. So you can select one of those, and you can move it to the hierarchy. Let's rename it to pipe, for example, the first one. And now you can see that we cannot see the pipe. Okay, this is because of the layer. So let's select the sprite render and set the sorting layer to midground. So it renders in front of the background, but behind the ground. And you can see that the pipe is over here, and we have one pipe. That's perfect. We just need the other pipe. So let's go ahead and drag the other pipe to the hierarchy. Let's call it pipe 2, for example. And now let's do the same thing. Let's set the layer to midground. And now you can play with the distance to make the gap smaller or bigger. I'm gonna leave it like this. I think this is a good amount for the gap. And now we're going to create an empty object because we need a column object that holds both pipes, okay? I'm gonna show you how to do this. It's very simple. Go to the hierarchy, right click in the hierarchy, select create empty. And you can see that when we create an empty game object, you can see that here the transform position, it has a random position. So let's go ahead and right click in the transform and select reset. So now we have reset the position. Let's rename the empty game object to column. And now what we want to do is that we want the pipes to be the children of the column. So let's select both pipes by holding shift. Let's drag them to the column like this. All right. And now you can see that the column is the parent of the pipes. If we select the column, we can see that we can move around the column. And when we move the column, we move also the pipes because the column is the parent. Okay, hit Ctrl Z to undo that. And now what we can do is that we can add the move left script to the column. So let's go ahead and add a component to the column, and let's look for the move left script. Let's add a speed of 2. Okay, it's gonna be the same speed for the column and for the ground. And let's hit play and see what happens. Okay, so we hit play, we can see that everything seems to be working fine, but we get an error. Okay, it says that there is no box collider attached to the column. Okay, this is because the column has no box collider. We can select the pipes and we can add a box collider to the pipes, for example. Okay, we're gonna do that. Let's select both pipes, another component. Let's add a box collider to the component to the pipes, so our bird or our chicken is able to collide with the pipes. If we hit play, our bird or chicken should collide with the pipes. Okay, perfect. But the column doesn't have a box collider, so we're getting this error. How can we solve this? We're gonna go back to the move left script and we're gonna make some changes. We are only going to access the box collider 2D if the object is not a column. Okay, if the object is a ground or whatever, we're gonna access the boss collider 2D, but if it's a column, we're not. So we're gonna do this by using tags. Okay, I'm gonna explain how they work. It's very simple. So we're gonna just check here if GameObject.tag is not equal. So this is how we write not equal with an exclamation mark and an equal sign. Is not equal to open quotes column. So if the object that this script is attached to is not a column, then we're gonna just select Control X, Control V. We're gonna look for the boss collider if the object is not a column, and we're gonna also reposition it if it's not a column. Okay, that's the case of the ground and the background. So we're gonna do the same. We're gonna say if GameObject.tag is not equal to column, then we're going to move this inside of here. Okay, so we're only going to reposition it if it's not if it is a column. We're going to say here else, so open brackets. If it is a column, then we want to destroy the column at a certain position. Okay, we're gonna do this later, but just know that that's what we will be doing. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go to the Unity editor, and let's see if this is working. Let's hit play, and we will see that it is not working. Okay, so here you can see that the chicken is going around. This is very easy to fix. Go and select the chicken and go to the rigid body, and what it says here in the field constraints, freeze the position on the z-axis. Okay, that way the chicken won't be rotating when it collides with other objects. And what is happening right here is that the column game object is not tagged with the column tag. Right here we are looking for the game object with the tag column, but the column has no tag. So let's select the column game object, and let's select where it says tags, and let's add a tag. Let's hit the plus icon, and let's type in column. We have to type in column the same way that we have typed in column here. Okay, it has to be the same spelling. Okay, so let's create it, column. Let's hit save, and let's select the column and tag it with the column tag. Now if we hit play, everything should work fine. We shouldn't have any errors. Perfect. So now when the column, now we only have one problem, and the problem is that when the column the column is moving to the infinite, to the left, and we don't want that. So what we can do is that we can destroy the column when it gets to this position over here to the left. It's like, I think it's position minus 3.5. That's a good position to destroy the column. So here we're going to say, we're going to destroy the column in the repositioning. We're going to say if transform.position.x is less than or equal. So here we're checking, so here we know that it is a column that we're working with. So if the transform.position.x is less than or equal to minus 3.5f, and why do I put minus 3.5f? Because this is a float number. Okay, so a float number is a number like 3.5, 3.66, 3.78. So we need to specify that it's a float, so we put the f here. Okay, this is just a thing that we need to do. If transform.position.x is less than or equal to minus 3.5, we destroy. And so we type in destroy and game object. We're gonna destroy the current game object because we know that this is a column. Okay, and now that this is done, let's go back to, let's save. Always remember to save when you finish modifying the script. Let's try again and see what happens to the column. And now you can see that the column, when it gets to the position to minus 3.5, it disappears. It gets destroyed. Perfect. Okay, so now what we can do is that we can create a column spawner to create, because we have one column, but we need many columns. Okay, so first of all, we're gonna create a prefab. I'm gonna tell you what a prefab is. A prefab is just creating a parent object of an object that you have already created. We have created the column game object. So we're gonna create a parent of this object, so we can create as many columns as we want. It's very easy. Let's go to the assets folder and let's create a new folder, create folder. Let's call it prefabs. Let's go inside the prefabs folder and let's just drag the column game object, just drag it from the hierarchy onto the prefabs folder. And now you can see that we have an image here of the column. Okay, so now we can drag the column to the hierarchy as many times as we want, and we can create different columns. And you can see that now they are colored with a blue, they're now, the color is blue, right, of the game object. This is because it's a prefab. So that the main function of a prefab is to be able to create as many copies or instances of the prefab as we want in the game. And this is the behavior that we want for the columns. So now we can get rid of 2 columns if we want. And now what we want to do is that we want to spawn different columns. We want to spawn them from here, from the right of the camera, okay? Because the camera has a boundary. I think I haven't told you that, but the camera has a boundary, and the game that we see is the camera view, okay? The camera view is what we actually see in our game, in our phone. So we want to spawn the columns from the right of the camera, from the right side of the camera. I want to spawn them at different heights. So maybe one we want it over here, one over here. So we want a random position for the y-axis of the column. So maybe I think 2.2 is a good maximum position, and maybe for the minimum position on the y-axis it could be minus 1 maybe, minus 1 and 2.2. Okay, we're gonna work with those values. All right, so now let's create the column spawner. So for the column spawner, we're gonna create an empty game object. So let's right click here in the hierarchy, create empty, and let's call this column spawner. Let's reset the transform as always, and that's what we do with the empty game objects. And now we're going to, what we need to do is that we need to define the behavior for the column spawner. So we're going to go to the scripts folder and create a new script. Let's call it column spawner, and let's open it in Visual Studio. Okay, so we need a certain number of things here. Okay, we need to spawn columns every X amount of seconds. So we need a max time. So we're gonna create a public variable, public float, max time, like this. We also need a timer, so float timer. So the idea here, the logic behind this is that we're gonna have a timer that's gonna be equal to 0, and we're gonna update the value of the timer by the seconds that go by. And when the timer is equal to 1.5 or more, for example, then we're gonna spawn a column. And whenever we spawn a column, we're gonna reset the timer back to 0. And that's the logic behind this column spawner. So in the update method, we're going to say timer plus equal time dot delta time. So here we're just saying that we want to add the amount of time that each frame lasts to render to the timer. So basically, if the timer is equal to 1, that means that 1 second has passed. If the timer is equal to 2, that means that 2 seconds have passed. And here, now after doing this, we're going to check if timer is greater or equal to max time. If this is true, then we're going to execute the code in here. We're going to say that we want to spawn the column. So just write a comment here. We're going to say spawn column. This is not code. This is just for us to know what's going on. Okay, these are comments, and these are for us to know what's going on in the code. So we're gonna create a new block of code to spawn the column. Okay, and we're gonna call it from here, from inside the if statement. So we're gonna say void columns spawn column, and this is going to be our function. And here we're going to say we're just going to create a game object. So we're going to create a variable of type game object called new column. I want it to be equal to instantiate, and we need instantiate is just saying that we want a copy of something. So we want a copy of the prefab, of this prefab, of the column prefab. So we need a reference. We need a reference to this prefab. How do we create a reference from the code? So to create a reference from the code, we just say public game object column. I'm gonna call it column prefab. So this reference, we're gonna set it from the inspector. You're gonna see it's very easy to do it. You're gonna see in a minute. And here we're gonna say instantiate column prefab. We want new column to hold the value of the copy of this reference. Okay, so we're basically creating a copy of the column prefab. And now we're gonna set transform the position. Okay, so transform.position is equal to new vector2 transform.position.x on the x-axis, because we're not gonna change the x position, and we're gonna say rand y for the y-axis. And you can see that there's a red line because we haven't defined what is rand y. So here So we're gonna first of all create the values. To create the random value for the y position, we're gonna say public float min y, comma max y. So we're gonna have a minimum value and a maximum value that we have talked about earlier, and we're also gonna have a float rand y, and we're gonna calculate the value of the rand y inside the columns, the spawn column function. We're going to say rand y is equal to random dot range min y max y. So random dot range is just a function that returns a value. Okay, we give it a minimum value and a maximum value, and it gives us a random number between these two values, and that's gonna be equal to our rand y, and that's gonna be the position, the random position for our new column that is being spawned. All right, so now that we have that done, let's go back to the Unity editor. Let's select our column spawner, and let's add the component. Let's add a component. Let's look for the column spawner script. And I think I haven't renamed it. Okay, yeah, everything is fine. For the max time, we said that we want to spawn a column every 1.5 seconds here in inspector. For the column prefab, we need to add in the reference. So just go to the prefabs folder and drag the prefab to the column prefab field here in the inspector. And for the min y, let's put in -1, I think it was, and 2.2 for the maximum value. And now you can see here in the scene that we cannot see very well the column spawner. So we can move it to the right, but still we cannot see it very well. We can see it because it has the arrows of the position. But what we can do is that while selecting the column spawner, let's go to the inspector and click this cube here in the top left corner. And we're gonna select the red diamond. And now you can see that we can see the empty game object. Okay, this is just a way to see the empty game objects a little bit cleaner in the scene. Okay, so now just make sure that the column spawner is a little bit to the right, so we have enough room. We can get rid of the column that we have in the hierarchy. We don't need that anymore. And let's click play and let's see what happens. Every 1.5 seconds we should be creating the columns, but it's not working. And why is it not working? It's not working because we have defined the function, but we are not calling it from anywhere. We have to call it from here. So let's call it spawn column. It's good that I'm making many mistakes, because by making mistakes is how you learn. So by actually trying new things and they're not working, and then you have to figure out why they are working or why they're not working. And that's like 50% of the, or maybe 60% of the coding experience of making a game. And after we spawn the column, we want to say that timer. We said that we want timer to be equal to 0. We want to reset the timer. All right, so now save it, go back to the Unity editor, hit play, and we should be spawning columns. But you can see that these columns are being spawned not in a very fashionable way. They're being spawned in a different way. I think there's something going on here. Okay, so I found the error. The error is that we're actually changing the transform position of the spawner. Okay, why is this? This happens because here I said transform position is equal to new vector 2. So if I leave it like this and we attach the column spawner script to the column spawner, this transform position is the transform position of the object that this script is attached to. In this case, is the column spawner. So we're modifying the position of the column spawner. We're not modifying the position of the new column. So here we need to say new column. It's the new column, is the position of the new column that we want to transform, that we want to actually change. So here it's new column transform position, not transform position. All right, so now everything should be working fine. All right, so now every 1.5 seconds we are spawning the columns. Everything is working fine. Perfect. Okay, so now what we can do is that we can try and go ahead and detect the score, because we have a game but we don't have a score. So we need a score for the game. So to do this is simple. Let's go to the hierarchy, let's right click and select UI canvas. Okay, we need a canvas to show our score. And in inspector we're gonna make some changes to this canvas. So let's go ahead and where it says render mode, change it to screen space camera. and we need to select a camera. So you can click the circle here and you can select a camera. If you don't see no camera, you can just click the main camera and drag it to the render camera field. For the sorting layer, let's add a new sorting layer. Let's create a sorting layer that will be in front of all the other layers. Let's call it UI. We want the canvas to render in front of all of those layers. Let's select the canvas and set the sorting layer to UI. Let's set the UI scale mode to scale with screen size, and let's set the reference resolution to 900 by 1600 because it's the resolution that we're working with. And for the match, for the width height match, let's set it to 0.5. Perfect. Now we're gonna right click in the canvas game object and select UI text. We're gonna rename the text to score. Alright, and we're gonna set the text to 0. And for the alignment, let's center the alignment, and where it says horizontal overflow and vertical overflow, change it to overflow. And now we can just go ahead and change the size, the font size like this, change it all the way up. And now we can move our score up like this, nice and big. All right, so now we have that done, everything is good, but how can we make sure that this scores adds up every time we go through the pipes? So to do this, we need to actually make a little bit of an adjustment. So let's go ahead to the prefabs and go to the prefabs folder. Let's double click the column. And now you can see that a new window opens, right? This means that what we have done right now is that we have opened the prefab here in the hierarchy. So now we can work only with the prefab to make the changes, okay? So now select the column and let's add a component. We will add a box collider to the component. And now you can see that the box collider has appeared here. We can play with the size of the collider and the position from these two fields, from the offset and the size. So you can just hover and you can see that we can, by dragging, we can make the collider thinner or thicker. So let's make it a little bit thin like this. We don't want it to be very big. Let's play with the Y also, make it like this. And we can play with the offset to move it to the right or to the left, or to move it up and down. I'm just gonna place it over here so it fits nicely. And we're gonna set this collider to trigger because we don't want the bird to collide with this collider. We want the bird to trigger this collider. So every time the chicken triggers this collider, we're gonna add 1 to the score. All right, so make sure that each trigger is checked. And now that everything is done, now we can go back to the scene just like this. If you don't know how to go back, I just click this arrow over here, and that's how I went back to the scene. All right, so now for example, if I move one column to the hierarchy, you can see that now we have the box collider. Every single instance of the prefab has a collider, and we're gonna make sure that every time the chicken goes through this collider, we add 1 to the score. All right, so to do this, let's go to the script. Let's go to the chicken script and let's create a new function. Just type in onTrigger and you will see that there's an option for onTrigger enter 2D. Hit it, and now we're gonna create this. This is a special method, okay? This is a method that will that will execute this code every time the chicken collides with or triggers a collider, okay? In this case, it's going to trigger the collider that the column has because it's set to trigger. And here we're going to just say if collision dot tag. So if the tag of the game object that this chicken collides with or triggers is equal to column, which is the case of the column, then we're going to add 1 to the score. So just here, I'm gonna write a comment, score up like this. And we have to add 1 to the score. We can just print something to the console to make sure it works. So print, and here we're going to say open quotes and score up. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if this works. Let's go back to the Unity editor. Let's hit play and let's see if this works. Okay, so every time we go through the pipes, we're adding 1 to the score. Everything seems to be working fine. Now what we're going to do is that we're going to create a score script so that we actually change this text. This 0 becomes 1, 2, and 3, and 4, depending on the score that we're having. So let's go to the scripts folder and let's create a new script. Let's create the script score. Let's name it score. Let's open it. And here we just need an integer. So we're gonna type in int score like this. At the start of the game, score is gonna be equal to 0. And now we also need a reference. We need a reference to the text, okay? Because if we select the score, we see that we have the text here. So we need a reference to this text component and this text field. So to create a reference, we're gonna do it like this. We're gonna say text. We're gonna create a variable text and we're gonna call it a score text. And you can see that we have a red line because we need to import a special library for this variable to work. So here at the top, we're going to say using Unity engine.ui. And now you can see that we have no errors. Now we can just say that score at the start of the game. We can say that score text is equal to get component text. So since we're going to attach this script to the score, this score text is going to be equal to the text component of the object. All right, and now we can say at the start of the game, we can say that score text dot text, which is the field, the text field, is going to be equal to score dot toString. Why do I say toString? Why do we need this toString function here? Because score is an integer, it's not a string. So we need to cast it or convert it to a string to be able to assign it to score text.text. All right, so now that we have that done, we need to create a method. So every time we score, we're gonna call this method. Okay, so I'm gonna call it public. We're gonna make it public void scored. We're gonna call it scored. And here we're just going to say score plus plus, and then we're gonna say score text is equal to score to string like this, and that should work fine. Okay, why is it not working? Because it's score text.text. Okay, and now we need a reference to this score script. So let's go back to the Unity editor, and what we're going to do actually is we're going to go to the chicken script and we're going to create a reference. So for the reference, we're going to say public score. So this means that we're creating a reference to the score object, game object with the score script. Okay, and here is when we are actually adding one to the score, we're going to say score dot score like this. And why am I able to do this? Okay, why am I able to call this scored function? Because if we go to the score script, I made it public. Okay, so by making it public, you make sure that we can access this function from another script, as we're doing here in the chicken. But always we need a reference. Okay, we need this function to be public, and we also need a reference to the game object that holds the score script. All right, so now that we have that done, let's go back to the editor and let's select our chicken. And now that we have our chicken, once we select it, we can see that in the script, it's waiting for a reference to the score. And if we select our score, we need to add, first of all, the score script to the score game object. So let's look for the score script, add it to it, and then let's select the chicken, and let's drag the score to drag the reference to its place. Now we hit play. Okay, so we're actually having a little bit of a problem here. Okay, so I found the problem. Okay, we have a problem here, and the problem is that okay, it was a very silly thing, but here where it says if collision.tag is not equal to column, it's when it's equal to column. Okay, when it's actually equal to column, because if it's equal to column, you might have noticed this error of mine earlier, so I apologize for the mistake. But if it's equal to column, then we want to score. Okay, so now everything should be working fine. It was scoring when it was hitting any other thing that wasn't a column, but now we want to actually it was scoring up when it was hitting the background, the collider of the background. So I think this is the best way to learn, really, is to make many mistakes, to see me making mistakes, and to see me fixing them and telling you why it didn't work. It was actually scoring up when it was hitting the collider of the background. So that was actually a little bit funny. All right, so now everything's working fine. Now what we could do is that we could we need to actually create a game over state for the game, because if the chicken collides with the ground or with the pipes, we want to finish or end the game. So to do this, we're going to create a new game object and we're going to call it game manager. So let's go to the hierarchy and let's do it. Let's create an empty game object. Let's call it game manager. Reset the transform position. And let's create a new script. And let's call it game manager. All right. Let's open the game manager script. And here at the start of the game, we want to say that time.timescale is equal to 1. Okay, so what is time.timescale? Time.timescale is just a way to set the velocity of the game. So if let's say that time.timescale is equal to 1, so this means that the game will run at normal speed. If I say that time.timescale is equal to 0, that means that the game will be paused. So at the start of the game, we want to run at normal speed, and we want to, let's get rid of the update method, we don't need it. Let's create a public method type void called game over. And when the game is over, we want to freeze the game. So when the game is over, we want time.timescale equal to 0. Now we need a way to call this game over method as we did before. We need as we did before with the score, we need a way to call this game over method from the chicken script. And we do that by doing the same thing, by creating a reference. Okay, so let's go and go to the chicken script, and let's create another reference, but this reference is going to be to the game manager. So we're gonna create a reference to the game manager like this. And when the bird collides, not when the bird triggers, but when the bird actually collides, then we want to end the game. So here we're gonna say on collision, enter 2D, just type in that and it will automatically complete game manager dot game over like this. And now we just need to go to save the script, go back to the Unity editor, select the chicken, and we need a reference to the game manager. We can drag the game manager, but we can see that we cannot drag it. Why is this? Because the game manager game object needs the game manager script, right? Remember that we're creating a reference. We are creating a reference to the game manager game object that has the game manager script, okay? And now that we select the chicken, we can drag the game manager game object to the reference, okay? So now we have the reference set up. If we hit play and we happen to collide with the ground, we should stop the game. And if we collide with the pipes, we should also freeze the game. Let's try and collide with the pipes. Perfect, everything's working fine. We just need one more thing. We need a button to replay the game. So it's very simple. Let's go ahead and right click in the canvas, select UI, and let's select button. And when you create a button, it comes with a text by default. So select the text and hit delete. And now select the button and let's rename the button to replay, for example. And now here where it says source image, in the image component, let's click in the circle and let's look for the button sprite. And let's hit where it says set native size. And now you can see that we have the button here in the scene. What we can do is that you can press T on the keyboard, and now you can see that there are some blue circles that appear around the button. You can hover and drag, and while dragging, hold shift, so you make the button bigger and proportionally bigger, okay? So now click W on the keyboard, or you can just go to the inspector, and for the X position of the button, select 0. So now you have the button over here. And now this is good and all, but we don't want the button to show at first. So to hide a game object in the scene, we can go here in the inspector, select the game object, go here in the inspector and uncheck this box here next to the name. And you can see that the game object disappears. This is what we call that the object is inactive, okay? It's set active to false. It's not active here in the scene. And we want to activate it when the game is over. So we're gonna create a reference to this button. So let's go to the game manager script and we're gonna create a reference to the button. We're gonna say here public game object replay btn. So at the start of the game, we're not gonna the button is gonna be set to it's gonna be set to inactive. So we can say at the beginning of the game replay button dot set active false. So we're hiding the button at the beginning of the game. And when the game is over, we're going to say replay button dot set active true. Okay, so at the end of the game, we want to show the button. And we also need to create the behavior for the button. Okay, we need to say, okay, what's going to happen when we hit the replay button. So we're gonna create a new method. We're gonna make it public, void on replay btn on replay button pressed. So when we press the replay button, we want to do something. Okay, we want to restart the game. So we're gonna say scene manager dot load scene parentheses game. So we're gonna rename our scene to game, and when we press the replay button, we're gonna this line of code only loads the scene again. Okay, this is like a magic line of code. It reloads the scene. So now we need a reference. Remember that we need a reference to the replay button. Let's go back to the Unity editor. We have our game manager here. Let's drag the replay button to the reference. And now let's select our replay button and let's go scroll down. And here we can see that there's an on-click field. The list is empty. Let's click the plus icon, and this is waiting for a game object here in the on-click field. So let's drag in the game manager to the object field here. And now where it says no function, click here, select game manager, and you can select on replay button pressed. All right, so now we're just adding the behavior to the button. Okay, so now we hit play. We see that we lose, the button appears, and we hit, but we get an error. We say scene game couldn't be loaded because it has not been added to the build settings. Okay, so there's something going on. If we take a look at the scene, we can see that here the scene in the hierarchy is called sample scene. We can also take a look at the scene by going to the scenes folder in the assets, and we can see that the name is sample scene. So to rename the scene, just click, hold, and release, and now we can rename the scene to game, capital uppercase G. Click enter, and says, do you want to reload the scene? You can click ignore, and now our scene is called game. So now everything should work fine. We play the game. 1, 2, 3, 4. We lose, and we can start the game again. Perfect. So we have a working game. So this is gonna be it for the game, and now we only have to upload it to publish it to the Google Play Store. Okay, so to publish it to the Google Play Store, it's very simple. The first thing that we need to create is that we need to create a build for the game. So we're gonna do that first. So to create a build for the game, let's go to File here at the top right, click Build Settings, and we're gonna create an app bundle, okay, for Google Play. We can create an APK or an app bundle. I recommend that you create an app bundle because it's gonna be better in terms of performance. So check the box where it says App Bundle Google Play, and now we have to go to Player Settings and make some adjustments. So let's go to Player Settings and see what we need to do. Okay, so the first thing is that we need to put here the name of our company. I'm gonna call it Joka. You can call it whatever you want. You can put here the name of your company, and now you can select the default icon. I'm gonna click select, and in the assets folder, you should see, okay, from here you cannot see anything, okay, but if we go to the assets folder, let's go and see the Google Play images, and here we have the icon. Okay, so you can drag the icon to the sprites folder in Unity, and now that we have the icon here, we can go and in the default icon we can select the icon. All right, so we have that done. We don't need that. Now for the resolution and presentation, okay, let's wait a moment. Okay, now for the resolution and presentation, let's go here where it says default orientation, and let's change from auto rotation to portrait because our game will be played in portrait mode. For the splash image, you can choose a splash image if you want. I'm not going to choose any. For the other settings, this is where we need to do some adjustments, some important adjustments. Here you can see that we have the version and the bundle version code. Okay, this is not important for now because this is going to be our first build. But imagine that you make an app, okay, you publish it in the Google Play Store, and imagine that you want to make some changes in the future. So every time you go back to Unity and you make some changes and you create a new build, make sure that you change the bundle version code to 2, for example. So if you make a new change and you make a new build, you change it to 2. If you make another change after a week, you change it to 3. So every time you make a change to the game and you make a new build, you have to keep changing this number, this bundle version code. And this version, you can also change it from 1.0 to 1.1, 1.2, and you get the idea. Okay, so for the minimum level API 4.4, that's okay. For the target API level, you have to select Android API level 29. That's what Google is obligating you to choose for now at the moment of making this course. Maybe in the future they change this, but for now it's like this. Then for the scripting backend, you just have to change it from mono to IL to CPP, and make sure that the ARM64 is checked. All right, so now that we have that done, let's go to where it says publishing settings. And we need to create a key for our game. We need to sign our game with a key. So to do this, it might look a little bit confusing, but it's actually not that confusing. It's simple. We have to check custom key store, and let's go and click where it says key store manager, okay? And just follow along. It's not very difficult. From here, from this window, select key store, and we're gonna create a new key store, and we're gonna select in dedicated location. I have created a folder in my desktop called Key Manager. You can create your own folder to keep your key store, and I'm gonna name it user. Okay, so it's gonna be user.keystore. That's gonna be my key manager. That's gonna be my key store. Okay, and basically what the key store is just you can think of the key store as a holder for your keys. So inside your key store, you can have as many keys as you want, and you have one key for each game that you make. So that's how it works. So we're gonna save the key store, and now Unity asks us to create a password for the key store. I'm gonna create a password, and now we can create new key values. So I'm gonna create my first key. It's gonna be chicken for this game, and I have to type in the password. All right, and just hit add key. Now Unity is saying, key chicken created in user key store. Do you want to set them as your project key store and project key? Yes. So Unity will automatically add them as the key store and your key. Perfect. So now everything looks pretty fine. I think we have everything done. Now we can close this window, and now the only thing that we need to do is that we need to click build. This will create the build. So let's go ahead and click build. Let's choose the name for the build. I'm gonna call it chicken 1. If you create an APK, the termination is going to be APK. If you create an app bundle, the termination is going to be AAB, but it doesn't really matter. And let's choose a folder where you want to save your build. I created a folder in my desktop called builds. I'm going to save it there. So just choose where you want to save it. Click save. And now this is going to take a little bit, okay? Depending on your computer, on your specs, it's going to take a little bit. So have a little bit of patience. Okay, perfect. So now that we have our bundle, we have it built. We have our build ready for the Google Play Store and saved in the folder. What we need to do is that we need to actually go ahead and and upload it and publish it. So to do this, let's go ahead and go to Google Play Console, and just go inside the Google Play Console. And if you don't have an account, okay, I have my own account, and everything is fine. But if you don't have an account, Google will tell you that you need to pay maybe $25 or $30. Okay, so you pay that, and you have access to lifetime access to the Google Play account, and you can upload as many apps as you want, which is amazing, really. So inside, you will see this view of the Google Play Console. If you don't see this view, it's maybe because if you are in the old version of the Google Play Console. This is the old version, but it's gonna be obsolete in a couple of weeks, I think, or something like this. So make sure you are in the new version of the Google Play Console. Okay, and now inside here, to make an app, to publish an app is very, very simple actually. We go here and click where it says create app, and we just specify the name of the app. So in our case, it's gonna be chicken. We say that it's a game that we want, it's a free game, and we check these boxes over here, and then we click create app. Once you hit create app, you will have the first steps over here that you need to take to publish your app, and there are some additional steps that you need to make. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the first steps and see what we need to do. we need to click where it says app access. And here it's asking you if you want all functionality. It's asking you if all functionality is available without special access, or all or some functionality is restricted. In our case, all functionality is available. So click save. Go back to the dashboard. And now you can see that we have completed this step. Now let's go to content rating, start questionnaire. Here we need to put in our email address. Let me just put it. All right, so here we need to specify what kind of app we're uploading. In our case, it's a game. Click next. And here they ask us a series of questions. Does it have violence? No. Fear? No. If it's yes in one of these categories, you have to check yes. But in our case, it's no. No crude language, no controlled substance, no crude humor. And then for this, I've done it a couple of times, and for my games, everything is no. But you have to read them all and see if one of them is yes for your game, because you need to check it yes if that's the case. Save, click next here on the right bottom, and click submit. This is the rating that has been created for my game. Okay, click submit here, and now that we have that done, we can go back to the app content, and now here we have a to-do list. Okay, so let's go to the ads, and here it says, does your app contain ads? No, my app doesn't contain ads. Let's go back to the app content. So save it. It's very intuitive. It's actually very simple to do this. Target audience and contents. Click start. Let's see. So here we have to specify which is our target audience. So our target audience would be between 13 and 18 or above, right? So click next. Could your store listing unintentionally appeal to children? Yes, it could unintentionally appeal to children. Click save. Go back to app content. And now for the privacy policy, we need to paste in here our URL. It says that you must add a privacy policy if your target audience includes children under 13. So to create a privacy policy is very easy. First of all, you need a privacy policy generator. There are lots of them in the internet. You can create your own privacy policy. And then what I like to do is I like to create a site on wix.com. Okay, you can create a site whatever you want. I just use wix.com because I think it's very easy. And what you do is that you create a very simple site. And once you create the site, you can create different tabs for your different games. And for example, for the chicken game, I have all of the privacy policy over here. So you just copy the link, copy the URL, and paste it, and save it. And there you have a privacy policy. And now that you have everything completed, if you have everything completed, just go back to dashboard. If you get lost for whatever reason by doing these steps, always go back to dashboard, and you will go to the main menu. Okay, and here it said select an app category. Let's click here. So we're making a game. The category is arcade. My email address again. gmail.com. Phone number and website are optional. External marketing, if you want your app to be advertised outside of Google Play, make sure you have that checked. Click save. Let's go back to dashboard, and we have to set up our store listing. So click here. Our chicken. Okay, so this is gonna be the listing for our app. So this is the information that's going to show up in the Google Play Store. So the name is gonna be chicken. For description, I'm just gonna type in chicken. Full description, I'm gonna type in awesome game. For the app icon, just click upload, and let's go to the assets, Google Play images, select the icon. For the feature graphic, here you have the sizes for the icon and the feature graphic and every single thing that you need to upload. So if you have doubts, you have the information here. For the feature graphic, just select the chicken FG. For this phone screenshots, I have one. So let's upload that one. And since you need to add a minimum of 2 screenshots, what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat and upload the same screenshot again. Okay, and here if you have a video on YouTube about your app, about your game, you can put the link here so that it appears in your Google Play listing. Once you're done with that, click save. Go back to dashboard. And now we are done with the first steps. Now here we have options to test your app. You can test your app with people in the Google Play Store, but I'm not gonna do anything of that. I'm just gonna go ahead and publish the app. So here it says publish your app on Google Play, view tasks, select countries and regions. So here you just click add countries and regions and select country regions, select all of them, add countries and regions, add. And now that we have added all the countries and regions, you just go to releases and click where it says create new release. Okay, so here the first thing that it says is Google will create and protect the signing key for your app and use it to sign each release. So just click here continue because we want Google Play to actually manage our key signing. So click continue. And here is where we need to actually do the main important thing, which is to upload our app bundle or APK. We have created an app bundle, so click upload, go to the file where you have your build and select it, click it, and it will upload. Wait a moment until Google checks that everything is okay and everything is fine. Okay, so everything seems to be fine. It says Android app bundle version 1.0. Okay, everything seems to be fine so far. The release name, well, it's gonna be 1.0. You can put in 1.0, whatever you want, whatever you prefer. And here for the release notes, you can put some notes for the release of your game. I'm just gonna put ready to play like this, and just click save at the bottom and review release. And here you can see that I have 2 warnings. I mean, warnings are not that important. They're just things that you should take into account to make your app more optimized, here it says, for example, it says this app bundle contains native code and you've not uploaded debug symbols. So if you upload debug symbols, it will make your game more secure. I mean, you can learn more about these warnings, and it's okay. It's always okay to make sure that your game is as good as possible. But warnings are not fatal. I mean, if you get warnings, it's okay as long as they are warnings. If you get errors, then you have to do something about it. And when you're ready, just click start rollout to production and your app will be released to the Google Play Store. It's really that simple, guys. I hope you enjoyed this course. I hope you really liked it. I left a link, for the assets, and if you actually buy them, you will be helping me a lot in the process. I really appreciate you. If you have reached this point, that means that you have learned a lot, that you're really interested in Unity, and you will make it. Just persevere and know that mistakes are part of the journey. And that's all, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.